Okay, I'm calling the meeting back from recess, and we're going to reconvene. Let's have roll call first.
Absolutely. So for the RWC members, Hamaji.
Here.
Bentley.
Here.
Hurt is excused. Byram.
Here.
Hildreth.
Here.
Lair.
Here.
Selden.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
Matheson.
Here.
And for the Finance Committee, Ring.
Here.
Starr. Castile.
Here.
Hines.
Here.
Jennings.
Here.
And Singh. Okay.
Okay, just before we start, just so you know, there will be an executive meeting for the board following this meeting, right after this meeting. We have a birthday today, somebody who decided to spend their time with us rather than going out and partying all day. David Jennings, oh yeah, okay, party tonight. And I just want to note that Nancy came prepared. I thought about it, but she came prepared for the lighting situation.
I hope it looks good on the TV.
And just before we start, does anybody have any comments about yesterday? Dwight.
So, sometimes when you sleep on things, they come to your mind. And one of the responsibilities that RWC has in regards to Confire is maintaining the shaded fuel break that was started over, I think, 18 months ago. I didn't see that addressed in the budget. And so I'm just wondering where the funds are to make sure that that shaded fuel break is maintained.
Okay, thank you. Now, is there any member forums?
Could we get a response to that question?
I'm sure it's going to come up during the
I was reaching for the button. The shaded fuel break does have resources. We are scheduled to take over maintenance of that next year in 27. So it is still under the control of, in the initial takedown of the weeds and the branches and so forth, is under the Confire. We will start budgeting for that in 27.
Thank you.
And Jeff, don't we have a piece of equipment that we actually operate up there and have to allocate time to do, the RC robot that does some mowing?
We did add that piece last year that will assist us with doing that work once we take it over, but has also assisted us in a lot of our other open space maintenance as well. It's been a real good resource.
Okay, so we'll move on to section 2 in our binders, new programs and program augmentation.
Okay, so under tab 2, we have new programs and program augmentation. We have 3 items for your consideration this morning. The first is the addition of a .4 FTE golf shop staff person. This is a position that is already allocated at .6, so this is just taking it from part-time to full-time, really based on the volume of play and demand for services from that department. But Mark Heptig is here to address the specific request.
Good morning. At the board retreat this summer, we talked about our individual departments, and I spoke quite a bit about the duties that my staff handles on a daily basis. I have about 200 hours to work with every week with my staff, and there's a lot we get done between club repair, lessons, merchandising, running the counter, running the tournaments daily. It's a lot to handle. And with the increased business on all fronts, not just one part, but on all fronts in the business, it's put quite a strain on us getting things done, to the point where we delay things. As we mentioned yesterday, lessons are quite a bit out, to the point where people may go somewhere else, and probably have. Or we are pressed to get tournaments done. Or club repair, we go, we just can't do it right now, you have to bring it back later. because we don't have the manpower that can possibly get that done. All of these tasks take time. If this is the season right now, I'm working on spring merchandising, getting meetings. Tomorrow I have 2 meetings with people that are coming in to show me goods for spring. Those each take an hour. It's amazing how quickly the time goes when you have 200 hours a week, and it's gone that quickly. So getting this point forward would allow us to perform at a higher level of service, because the additional counter help would free up the professional staff to give more lessons, do more club fitting, do more club repair, prepare the tournaments better, and sell merchandise in the golf shop. And that's really what I'm looking for, is that additional help. Are there any questions for me on this?
Yeah, I have a question. It's Leanne. Are you just adding hours, or are you actually taking on a new person?
This would be adding hours. We have a person right now that we could turn into full-time. She's part-time right now. She's done a terrific job. She's worked at other golf courses and been a real asset to us. We see her as a real positive force in the golf shop, so it would be adding hours.
Okay, but moving her to full-time, does that put her into the benefits category as well?
Yes. Yeah,
This
I think
is
she has benefits now.
Yeah, this is a position that's already 0.6, so they currently qualify for benefits. That's why this is a little bit lower cost item in order to increase them to full-time.
Correct.
Okay, thanks very much.
Adrian?
Okay, looking at the detail on your budget, I see that the 2025 budget was 21.2 people, and 25 actual was 20.4, and we budgeted already, or in the proposed budget goes back to 2120. So I'm just, so this would take it to where? I guess I'm a little confused.
The headcount in the budget for actuals reflects that even though we have been advertising, we haven't been able to pull the trigger on hiring a assistant superintendent, which then means the golf course superintendent, instead of going to 0.8, they stayed at full time. So we are basically adding 0.4 to the 21.2 in our planning for 25.
So it would become 21.6 if we do this total. Right now, this reflects 2026, where we would, for just the assistant, like Jeff said.
Right, but I mean, so I'm not really pushing back against doing this, because I think it's probably the right idea. But I mean, is some of your problems right now that the fact that you're unable to provide the service you want just due to the fact that you're down under budget already?
Well, remember, when we have these numbers here, this is golf course and golf shop.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really look at the bottom line there, the 1.6, that would be the increase to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the other position is on the golf course, which has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do at the golf shop number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Mark, the position, could you just enlighten us on how tough it is to fill that assistant supervisor position role?
The superintendent position? Well, yeah, it's been difficult. We put the position out there several months ago. We have had some interviews. No one's really fit the bill completely for what we're looking for. This is much more than just someone hiring to cut grass. We need someone who's in the program to become a full superintendent in the long term, has a lot of knowledge, taken some classes or is going to take classes, is interested in learning all the skills that Blake already possesses and can do a lot of the duties. As you can see in the idea is Blake would go to 0.8. So this person really needs to be someone who can direct staff and can also make decisions when Blake is not here on what's happening on the golf course. Right now, currently, we don't have that person. If Blake doesn't make the decisions on aerifications, putting down a fertilizer, putting down any kind of granular material on the greens or the fairways, taking care of the golf course on a daily basis, if he isn't here to make those decisions, we don't have anybody to make those decisions. Assistant superintendents are at every golf course, really except ours. We are the one golf course that doesn't have an assistant at this point. The other problem for us in getting someone is the fact that it's a highly regarded position, and there are openings throughout Northern California. We know of at least 3 others right now. So it's a small pool of people who could do this, and it's very competitive right now. So, we are still looking, hopeful that something will come along, but we are also looking at during this process, we've been looking at changing up how the position is formed and actually what we're looking for them to do, which may help us get that person, if that makes sense. We've changed up the inquiries about the job. So
I know that Blake is probably thinking about kicking back a little bit, right? I just want to make sure that we get this done sooner than later because that is such an important position. But have we thought about, since it does seem to be difficult to find a person like that, to be able to get somebody who has a desire to do this, maybe not all the skills, but get a couple of years of training through us to be able to get them to that position?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely, that's true. Yeah, it doesn't have to be somebody that fills all of the spots right now. It's what we're looking for long term, but someone who is interested in learning the business at that level, has taken some of the courses or is going to. They absolutely, they don't have to be fully qualified at this point. But like I said, it's very competitive finding someone, and it's a very small pool that we're drawing from.
Appreciate the questions and so forth about the overall staffing. I just want to make sure everybody's clear. We are talking about the addition of 0.4 FTE to the golf shop. We got stuck or started going down the path of talking about the golf maintenance and this assistant superintendent position. That's not what this item is about. We're strictly talking about 0.4 addition to a golf shop staff person.
Okay.
Dwight,
Could I ask for a straw vote that we approve this 0.4 position for the Golf Pro Shop?
are we going to list the straw votes and do this at the end, or?
You can do that however you'd like.
Yeah. Okay, we could go ahead and do a straw vote on this. So all four adding the 0.40% person to increase their job? Anyone opposed?
Hold on, I didn't see Leanne.
I rose my hand.
Thank you, Leanne.
Okay.
Okay, the next position we have for you, thank you, Mark. The next person that we have for you is Ann Peterson to talk about a recommendation that is really coming from the marketing task force that worked this last year, and that is in the area of digital marketing and content creation. Is a recommendation to add one full-time equivalent position in the news shop. Yeah.
Thank you. So as Jeff mentioned, this is a recommendation that came from the marketing task force. What they identified is that when it comes to marketing in Rossmore, we really don't use social media at all as a platform. Surprisingly, we are pretty much the only active adult community in California that has zero social media presence, so we're behind our competition as well. And it comes at a time where digital is definitely a space where our incoming residents tend to live, and we just have not really put a focus on that area yet. Even from a staffing standpoint, we only have the website content manager that is devoted to the digital space. So this would be an opportunity to take that next step into an area where we really should be. And so what the task force has recommended is what's called a low effort approach. That means we would be focusing primarily on Facebook and Instagram to get ourselves out there with our prospective buyers in terms of marketing Rossmore Walnut Creek. This position would be responsible for creating the content, both the written and visual, with a large emphasis on video for all of our digital platforms, but really primarily for that social media. We'd also be looking at this position in two other ways. One, we do want to bring an internal social media platform to My Rossmore that would allow and become a communication tool for our mutuals, our clubs, our departments, and this position would help us to implement that. And also we would be looking at this position to help market for My Rossmore, which will have the big redesign next year. So in terms of an estimate for salary and benefits, it would add $101,000 to the Rossmore News and website end of the communications department. Yesterday, Dwight asked us to go back and take a look at how we might be able to add in revenue on the digital side of the business to help offset this position. So before I do that, I'd like to walk everybody through the timeline for Rossmore.com and MyRossmore.com, what we're looking at for the redesigns. So to start, just as sort of background, Rossmore.com is going to be designed by a third-party website vendor. However, staff is going to be very integral, especially the first 8 weeks of this project, in determining what that looks like. So we are very involved on that end. My Rossmore, on the other hand, is going to be designed entirely in-house by staff, and that's primarily our website content manager, Javier Roman. So in terms of the timeline, this month, we are looking at the discovery and strategy side of the business. We're doing the foundational work, if you will, with the website designer and the media company that will shoot the photos and the video. At the same time, on September 22nd, we're going to reconvene the marketing task force to start looking at myrossmore.com, what that redesign will look like, and start to get some feedback from the community about what they want on their own website. In early October, we are going to be starting our brand strategy and design work. This is the main infrastructure for the website, your framework, your visual guidelines, things like your navigation. That'll happen early October. In late October, we will have 3 days of intensive on-site media shoots. That's again for the photos and the videos. And we'll start building out the wireframe and the key pages. That would be things like what the home page is going to look like. In November, we really move into development and implementation. This is when the website gets onto the platform. We develop our theme, we integrate our CMS, and it's also important, we need to build out our ad positions. We do currently in our budget have $50,000 for digital revenue, so we have to make sure those ad positions are on the new site. In December, development and implementation will move into things like the search engine optimization, that's so we can be found on the internet, our final configuration, and the important security setup. In January, we'll do site testing for both Rossmore.com and My Rossmore. So you're also looking at migrating over the content, setting up our membership database for the Vermont systems piece that'll work on My Rossmore. And this is when we'll really get staff trained on the back end. If all goes according to plan, we will launch in February, so that'll be our go live month. We will also start ramping up our training with the residents, and this is when we'll look at post-launch optimization for Rossmore.com, making sure it does what we expected it to do. In March, this is our big push for marketing for both of the websites, but also for the Rossmore Walnut Creek rebrand name. So we're hoping to do a kind of a grand celebration in February or in March and have everything ready to go. And we will be doing on-site road shows so that we can bring to as many residents as possible what the two websites look like. That means April and May is really when we do the kickstart with the social media strategy. We hope to have the digital content creator on board by then. We're getting them trained, and that's the point where we'll come to finance and planning and the full board to start discussing digital revenue. There are a couple other factors, reasons why we're waiting until June to have that conversation. So for starters, our current real estate ad campaign is active on rossmore.com until May of 2026. They have already paid for those positions, so those ad positions would stay through at least the end of April. We are still in the process of rolling out the name rebrand. We've done a lot of work for that, but there are questions that still need to be answered. Like, do we want to change the monument sign outside of the gate? What needs to happen with things like letterhead? And even some of our internal documents still say GRF and MOD, those all need to get changed over. And that's happening at the same time we're doing the website work. I want to be real careful of burnout. We are doing these two projects in addition to all of our normal work. If we stretch ourselves too thin, we do run the risk of falling behind on a very ambitious timeline, so I've got to be really conscientious about that. This is the most important one to me. Resident training and customer service has to be the priority for the first 6 months of the year. We are putting too much time and too much money into these websites not to be certain that our residents can use them. They know they're there and they know how to get onto my Rossmore and Vermont systems. So that has to be our #1 priority. Otherwise, we did all of this for nothing. And my approach when it comes to revenue is always about trying to develop the right strategy for long-term growth versus that quick, short-term gain. We have limited resources. I have a 32-hour-a-week employee who oversees our $90,000 that we make for classifieds and legals, while also running the front desk and doing our office management. I have 2 salespeople who are responsible for selling the weekly ads in the paper, the 3 special sections, the all-around Rossmore guide, the buses, and the websites. Adding in another piece means that we're going to have to find some ways to be efficient and effective with their time for them to take on an additional piece. So those are factors that we have to add in. On top of that, if you remember, last month we brought to you the first idea that we have for a new revenue stream. And that is to add $100 guest pass to have prospective residents come in to use our amenities in Rossmore. It is an idea that's in its infancy. We need to do a lot of work to analyze how it might work, to bring it back to the committees and the board to see if it's an idea you're interested in. So we have not built that money into the budget because, again, we don't even know if that idea is going to take off. So the bottom line in this, I'm not going to introduce any additional revenue into the 2026 budget. I really honestly think we need to do this right. Let us take the second half of next year to really answer that question, but allow us to make the first half of the year about a successful launch for these websites. If we get the traffic to the websites, that positions us so much better to be able to maximize revenue on the back end. So I'm asking for 1 year, and in 2027, I promise you I'll bring more revenue. Any questions?
Ted, can I say something?
Dwight.
So, Ann, thank you for that. I just want to say the marketing task force really felt, based on feedback from realtors as well as residents, that a lot of decisions on buying are made by children of adults. And so social media is really an important element going forward that we have ignored up to this point, and it was really something that we focused on as a task force, but said, man, we have all this other work to do first before we can get there. The good news is that our board fellows from the Haas School of Business, the MBA students, designed a whole blueprint for that social media engagement and rollout, and so that work, that planning work is done for Ann. I would agree, Ann, it's premature. I love revenue, you know that, but I think it is premature at this point in time to put expectations on 2026, but certainly designing that during 2026 to realize during 2027 is important.
I have a question when you're ready.
Go ahead, Leanne.
In my non-RWC life, I've seen the value of Instagram and how it affects revenue and can affect revenue tremendously. So I'm very much in favor of this position. But I know that working with Instagram means that there may be design platforms that are necessary or subscriptions to design platforms. Is that part of your budget, or will that be in another year? What do you plan for that?
We already have it in the budget. We anticipated that we might need it and start working on it this year, so it's already in the budget and it's reflected in the 2026 already.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can you give me an idea about where the digital revenue comes from? What are these sources of revenue?
You bet. So right now, the 50,000 that exists in the budget, those are ad positions that are on rossmore.com primarily. So if you go, for example, to our real estate and home page, we have 3 featured ads and we have 18 what we call regular ads. Each one of those has an associated cost. The realtors are buying that ad space for a year. That accounts for almost 30,000 of the 50,000. We have additional ad spaces on other pages on rossmore.com that are also a factor in there. We also maintain a real estate professional listings. So right now, if somebody sends an email to info@rossmore.com and they're asking to tour Rossmore, we are redirecting them to the 3 main companies outside the gate, Rossmore Realty, Berkshire Hathaway, and RE/MAX Accord. They handle the tours. And we're also giving them the list of the real estate advertisers from the Rossmore News who pay $300 to also be on the website as potential real estate agents that they could work with. When we have one other small piece that comes in, there is a component with the e-edition that brings in a little bit of money. We are going to look at trying to expand that out, but again, right now, Javier is the one who would have to do that, and he is neck deep in my Rossmore, so I'm not going to shift him over to really looking at how to make more revenue off rossmorenews.com until 2027.
I see. So in 2027, when we've finished all of this work, what would the additional sources of revenue come from? The same suspects or different places?
So again, this will be the bigger conversation that we have a year from now. The biggest piece that you have is the way that rossmore.com is now being set up is so that you have a workflow, if you will, of how you're leading people to an endpoint, to an action item by being on our website. And that action item is, I'm now interested in finding out more to potentially move into Rossmore. By getting them to that point, right now we've done a very small scale approach to that. That's where we're selling the small position where we just give real estate agents a list of them to prospective buyers. What we would be looking at is how to actually monetize that lead, what that looks like. I don't want to go into too many details because I'd really like to try to get more analysis, especially in working with our real estate agents, and what the value of that might be. But that's going to be your primary spot. There are a few other things that you can tap into. Sponsored content is a really big one. That's where you have an advertiser who writes an article and puts it onto your website. I would like us to utilize that even more, especially with rossmorenews.com. That is a high ticket money. I mean, that makes you even more than some of your regular traditional advertising does. By bringing in somebody who can do video, that's another one. That is a space we have not done with our advertisers yet, but I have had 18 in the last year and a half ask me if we can do it. So if we have this new social media person who has an emphasis in video, we'd be able to create some of those video spots for our advertisers and also roll those out with rossmore.com. You can charge a lot more for a video than you can for a stagnant ad. So these are just a couple of examples. I can tell you right now, I have a list of 20 different possibilities, but again, I'm all about taking our finite resources and making sure we direct it at our highest revenue potential. When you only have a few people, you want to make sure you're getting your biggest bang for the buck. So each one of these areas needs to be reviewed and analyzed so that we're making sure that when we select probably our 2 to 3 things we go after, it's going to be those high ticket items.
Roy?
I have a question. The new position is basically a web application ITP person. So after 2027, the things are most likely being developed, and then the person maybe can contribute to the IT group. So IT group with 4 people, we are very short. So maybe at that time you can share the responsibility with the IT group.
So this position is solely dedicated to the marketing and our kind of a new division that we would have related to marketing and content creation within the Rossmore News. It would have maybe some interface with IT, but would certainly not be in the IT department, nor responsible to IT or IT related duties, purely on the marketing content creation side, and they will be very busy in that arena.
Adrian?
Okay. When you hire a marketing person or start a marketing initiative, you always do it with a plan for revenue. That marketing, the sole purpose of marketing is to bring in revenue. And at the moment, I don't see that revenue plan. I mean, we've talked about the idea of selling leads. We've talked about a bunch of ideas here. And I think many of them are practical and potentially worthwhile. But we don't have a full sort of business plan for this at this point. And lacking that, I feel uncomfortable about committing to a marketing person without seeing that plan first. I also don't see why we can't do this in the middle of next year. We've sort of taken the attitude that the budget is the budget and it's set right now for, you know, all this period of time. But we do have a certain amount of flexibility. We're a financially strong operation, and adding somebody, making a small change like this in the middle of a year is entirely feasible for us, financially speaking. And so I would rather see you come to us maybe in February, maybe in June, and say, look what I can actually accomplish here. And we can see the whole thing as opposed to kind of roll the dice right now.
So if I can address 2 parts of that. First, we don't have a marketing branch. Right now, your marketing branch is me. And so what you're talking about potentially doing is rolling out a new website in February with nobody to oversee the marketing arm of that except me. Now I can do that, but I can tell you right now, it's not going to be on Facebook, it's not going to be on Instagram. And we've identified that one of our primary audiences are those adult children, and that's the space they're in. So for the first part of that year, you are talking about not going where the target audience is. So that's the first part. The second part, I'm going to jump back a little bit to 2 years ago. We did not have a website content manager. I came to the board and asked that we create this position, and we knew at the time that we could really only pay for half of it. So I was asking for kind of a good faith effort to bring this person over so that we could reach this point, where we could reach a point where we could actually make My Rossmore a real residence website. That would not have happened if the board had not made an investment in with that position. And I'll point out that now we are actually generating revenue. We have brought our revenue up. That's one reason why we're selling more legals. We were selling more display ads so we could take that money and put it into the digital side of the business. If I had a staff of more than 13 people, that includes myself, if I had another 2 people, I could have come to you today and put revenue absolutely on the table. I could have shown you what a business plan would look like. I don't have those resources, so I am having to ask up front for a little bit of good faith in what we're trying to accomplish to put the person in place that we need in order to build us up to that avenue. I realize that it's a bit of a gamble because you don't know what it's going to look like. I certainly could have come in here today and I could have said, fine, I'll give you another $100,000 of revenue. But then February rolls around and I don't have the time or the staff to devote to helping our residents. It's part of having a coupon that puts all of the money into that bucket and tells them, you're getting the newspaper, you're getting the buses, you're getting the golf course. Even if you don't use all of those amenities, you're getting these pieces because it's about that overall good for the community. So that's kind of how I'm looking at that as well. This marketing piece is brand new. Absolutely. If you want to do marketing with it all being about pay it off up front, you build the marketing team over a 2-year period and then you roll it out. But my question is, do we want to wait another 2 years?
So part of this as well, if you think about traditional marketing, you're trying to sell a product, a service, and generate revenue. This all began over an initiative to try and really define what is Rossmore? Where are we in this community? Is this affordable living, senior living? Is this premier living? Where do we want to, how do we define Rossmore? Because as costs continue to increase, it becomes very difficult to be both affordable and premier. And that's what really started the whole marketing task force is how do we define, how do we sell, market to new buyers and to existing residents what the value of Rossmore is. So yes, we want to try and generate some revenue through ad sales and so forth, but we also are looking at a way to not only reach our residents, but potential new residents with a definition of what are you getting when you come to Rossmore. And that then helps us when we do budgeting, when we do our planning. What are we trying to hit? Are we trying to hit affordability? Or are we trying to hit having more services, programs, and amenities? So this isn't really all about marketing in its traditional sense of can we sell and generate revenue. It's more about messaging to our audience.
Could I, Ted? So the other thing that Jeff did not mention there is that this really started when the sales declined in 20 whatever year it was, and how do we generate more MTF to keep our capital fund afloat? And so the only way that we generate more MTF is to sell more units. And in the marketing task force, in looking at this with realtors and so on, recognize there are some real shortcomings in the way that we present Rossmore right now on Rossmore.com. So my question, Ann, is that this position, not only helping with social media, but also helping with content for the websites and myrossmore.com. MyRossmore.com, by the way, just a major enhancement for our residents. This will be a new experience, one-stop shop for our residents that is so important going forward.
Well, I'd like to push back a little bit.
After Nancy, I'm sorry.
One second, Leanne.
I'd like to push back a little bit on the MTF thing. The number of homes we sell every year depends on the number of people that leave Rossmore. That's it. That's what determines the number. Those homes sell. It doesn't matter whether they sell in a week or a month or a year, but they eventually sell and we collect the MTF. We're not demand driven or we're supply limited. And the supply is because of our age, quite frankly. And so it's not, and for RWC, we get the MTF. We get the MTF when that house sells, whether it sells in a week or a month or a year. So our revenue from MTF is fixed, essentially by the demographics of our population. And you could go out there and beat the drum and do all kinds of things. You wouldn't sell another home.
So, Adrian, I don't want to get engaged in a long debate here, but one of the things that we've recognized over the last 2 years is the increase in leased units. And that is a situation where sellers are not, or owners are not selling, not generating an MTF. Yes, it does generate lessee amenity usage fees, but that feeds the coupon, which is great. does not feed the MTF or capital budget. So
Right,
we could argue about this all day, and I don't need to go any further. Thank you.
One other thing is Linda Register, who's a real estate agent and was part of the marketing task force, she did talk about the fact that there are listings that are going out, and as Dwight's pointing out, they're not selling, so they're pulling it back and they're renting and they're waiting for another day. And what she said is that they are seeing the length of time that a home stays on the market, it's 10 times what it used to be. One of the things that she pointed out is that we really do need to start focusing on what it is Rossmore has to offer so that they understand and they're attracting a cash buyer. It's a completely different market from what we have been trying to market to in the past. And so that is a much higher emphasis on that all-in concept, all in for services, all in for amenities. And again, our website does not currently reflect that. So that's kind of what put us down this road. But again, once the websites come out, the question becomes, we can't just sit back and say, oh, they're going to come and find us. They're not. We need to go find them. And so that's really what what this marketing person is going to do for us. That's why we're not calling it a social media manager. It is a digital content creator. And that's because we're putting that emphasis on the marketing aspect.
Leanne?
Yeah, to back up what Dwight was talking about, the social media aspect of this pushes Rossmore out. It pushes you out into a demographic that we haven't touched yet, and it's exposure. So what it does is it just broadens your, just to use the word again, exposure to the world that we can't do at this point. So whether houses are selling quickly or not, it makes the awareness of Rossmore more prominent out in the world. And I can't stress enough the amazing power of these tools that Ann is talking about, and having an expert with those tools use them. I think it's going to be a tremendous benefit for Rossmore.
There's also a difference in our approach versus a real estate agent's approach, right? Their approach is sell the house to whoever's willing to buy it. Our approach is bring in the resident who's going to thrive here and want to stay here and live. What happens when you bring in somebody who thought that Rossmore was something that it's not? And then they start talking to their neighbors, and that negativity starts to percolate, and that does not do us any good from a marketing standpoint either. So part of this is also about attracting the right Rossmore resident.
So to bring it back more to about the website itself, I'm not looking at, I mean, I think it's great that it could possibly generate revenue. I think there's a definite piece that can help with. But thinking about the website, I don't know how many of you have been on Rossmore.com or My Rossmore, but it's pretty archaic. When you get on there, if you go to My Rossmore, it's like 25 clicks to get to whatever you want to find, and it should be simple. So I think that we have to look at this as any other amenity that we are adding into Rossmore to bring us up to a current status. If you look at other facilities around California, just look at our sister facility in Laguna Woods, and their website is light years ahead of ours. And I think that this is needed just to bring us up to speed. And I mean, you can get into all the little things of what it's going to drive and how we're going to generate money and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure we're going to get some money out of this. But I'm looking at this as making it easy for our members to be able to get the information that they want to get, and also separate myrossmore.com, which has everything about us on it, and make that something that just shows off Rossmore. And the other one is the tool that our members need to be able to get things done. And so I'm just trying to say, I think that this is really important. This is something we need to do for the members, and then we can get into all the other pieces that it can generate and what else it can do later on.
The last point that I'd like to make. This is a over $23 million budget, and we don't have any marketing. Again, except me right now. Tell me what business out there has a $23 million budget with no marketing. It's just at some point we've got to start somewhere, and my suggestion is this is our starting point. I think that's why we put a task force in place to begin with.
Hari.
So I think that the timeline is quite ambitious, and it's going to take time and probably a lot of work in the beginning, and then might taper off a little bit. So just in terms of clarification, the position is going to be temporary and for 1 year, right? Probably, and then extend in the next budget cycle?
Correct.
So can we make the expectation then that by next year, this time, you would have a fairly detailed marketing plan in terms of the short run and the long run?
100%.
Would you like to do a straw vote for this recommendation?
With no more questions, I think we can call for a straw vote. Oh. All in favor, raise your hand.
I'm raising my hand.
All opposed? And one abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, this last item in this section is funding for the internal control audit. This is an item that has been around since the budget workshops in 2022. At that time, the board considered and initially funded an internal control audit for the RWC side of the house, but not the RPM side of the house. This was also a time when we were beginning the discussion of the implementation of our new ERP system and funding for that transition. And then in the next budget cycle, the item was not funded based on the fact that we were, again, in the midst of this new implementation of an ERP system. We are bringing this back for your consideration. I will note that unfortunately, due to our delays with the audit, we did not get a chance to get a recommendation from the audit committee on this item. However, it will be on their agenda for, I believe, the 17th, and so we will have a recommendation from them for your consideration before you actually approve the budget. From a staff perspective, we would suggest that next year may not be the best year for completion of this internal control audit. As we have gone this year through the transition, next year will be implementation and further development, refinement of all of our new systems, looking at process, looking at how we actually do everything that we do for both sides of the house. So our recommendation from a staff perspective would be that this item be delayed until early 2027 when we have a much better handle on the use of all of our new tools and how we want to analyze the delivery of our services. But again, we will have a recommendation from the audit committee. The other recommendation we would make is that don't limit this to just the RWC side of the house, but it should be the full scope of our services, including RPM as well.
Increase the cost.
Todd, did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I just want to add, I would say good morning, Finance, good morning, Board. I'm definitely very bullish, and I've been on record that I think an internal control audit is a fantastic thing. It's a very needed thing. I think it's just where we pick our battles at this time. We are just launching the field service management module for the order desk on October 1st. That includes our first time we've used purchase orders. We're looking to bring on Vermont systems, right? So if you think just reality here, it's not that anyone's saying, I think this is a wonderful thing. But by the time we'd actually go out and get a bid and find the firms and get the board to approve it, we're looking to impact all our staff third quarter of next year, middle of budget and everything else, right? And we're just trying to walk right now on our new systems. We are taking the NetSuite as a great opportunity for us to revise and document our processes, put in the right security and dashboards for all the employees. So all that work happening right now, we're walking before we run. So for an internal control audit to come in the summer, early as next summer, right, we're not going to be a place to have all that work done. And in fact, we got to get Vermont systems, and we have to get SFM all integrated, and we still have work to do on our own use of NetSuite. And I agree with Jeff, it should be expanded to include the RPM side, so we can also instill confidence out there in the community in terms of the back of the house and how we're managing things. So once again, I'm fully engaged with having this. It's just we want to do it so we're actually ready for it. And so I agree with the recommendation to
Susan, did you have a question? And then Adrian.
Well, it's great to hear that Todd wants to do that internal control audit. It's great to hear that. But speaking as a former member of the audit committee and the secretary for over 4 years, I'm not against the recommendation. I just want to, for the record, state that a former audit committee, I'm not speaking of the current one, has been recommending this since at least 2022. It's a very important function for us to take care of. So I'll be on this board hopefully again next year. So I'm hoping that in 2026, we're able to get a good solid RFP so we have a firm number for the 2027 budget. And I will be watching this and expecting to see it in the 2027 budget. Thank you.
Adrian.
I was just wondering what time of year is most appropriate to do this? I mean, we've got audit stuff going on early in the year. We've got budgeting at this time of year. We've got capital budgeting. It's almost like there's no time when you actually have time to do this. We need to focus so that when the time is right, you can pull the trigger and go.
100%, Adrian, that would be in the summer. So after, as we get back on cycle, as we move forward, let's say we're looking at the 27 calendar, we'll have all the audit work for all the mutuals and RWC and RPM through the first tertile. And so then I would say May, June, in that time frame is the absolute right time for this before we start looking at, the budgets and forecasts. So I would definitely plug it in for the summer.
Dan?
I am a member of the audit committee, and I'm very strongly in favor of the internal control audit, but I'm also very strongly in favor of delaying it until 2027. We got to do it right. We have to go out, get proposals. We went out 4 years ago, got a proposal. It's useless. We've changed systems. We changed everything. We have to start from scratch. Again, 100% in favor, and I think I'm not speaking for the whole committee, just for myself, that I would like to see it delayed until 2027.
So Ron or Roy.
If I remember correct, last December or last board meeting, and I remember Dan asked us to approve the internal auditing budget for it. I still remember that very well. And I agree both you and Susan's statements.
So is this something that we need to do a straw vote on, or is it a straw vote to push it to next year, or?
So you could do a straw vote on whether you want to fund it in this budget or delay it until 2027. Again, not to preempt the audit committee is certainly not what our intention is here. You will get a recommendation from them after their meeting on the 17th. So you could delay your straw vote even if you'd like, or you could take an initial straw vote and then consider it once you get that recommendation as well.
Yeah, so could we then, let's just go for the straw vote for a delay.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
The money that's right in here now, is that to help pay for designing and getting out the RFP? Because if it is, we shouldn't wait till 2027 to do that part. We should be doing that part next year, right?
No, the funding or the process to develop the RFP would be a staff level process working with the audit committee to finalize. Then we would distribute that RFP, get proposals. We anticipate that the proposals would be within this $100,000 budget. So once we have proposals, we'll bring that back again to the audit committee and then to the board.
You can do the work first.
So depending on when the audit takes place, we would begin the work in advance so that we would have a auditor on board by the time we're ready to launch, as Todd's mentioning, May, June of 27, unless you want to do it in 26.
So is there, shall we do a straw vote then on postponing the internal audit controls for till next year, I guess it is, that we do next budget cycle?
Till 2027.
2027. Show of hands, who's all in favor of that?
I have my hand raised.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good discussions on...
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to check. When would we discuss questions about staff proposals that are not included in this document?
Which staff proposals would that be?
Yeah, well, if you'll recall, excuse me, yesterday, you know, I'm firmly in support of the marketing position. I understand how strategic that is. I also would like to know, I'm not proposing a specific position, but I'd like to know what the recreation staff might need in order to facilitate more room usage. And I know it's not recommended in this budget. Maybe we'll talk about it at some other time, but I would really like to know what positions we might need to consider in the future that would also address our residents, many residents' wants and needs to use these facilities. So that maybe we could address that in the future, but I'm interested in knowing what we should be thinking about for additional positions in 2027 after Vermont Systems is up and running and we're using it and seeing what kind of information that provides. How could we provide more utilization of the rooms?
So certainly we can address that as we come into 2027. Some of that has to do with policy, which will be addressed at the policy committee over the next year. And then some of it has to do with availability, room allocations, and so forth, that may have some influence with staffing. Some of it certainly has to do with how we utilize our new tools in Vermont Systems. So this will evolve over 2026. It is certainly something we can have further discussions with both planning and individual board members. But you will see some items start to come to policy that really will determine, how we structure and move forward with rentals. So I don't think we're ready at this point to say to you we need X number of resources in order to do X. There's a lot more discussion around policy that needs to take place.
Okay, thank you.
So are we on section 3 on program modifications? There's nothing really to discuss there, so we're jumping on to section 4.
And section 4 just really has to do with the presentation that was made to the board and finance committee last month. The board did approve new fees. These are all reflected within the base level budget. This just is a review of the presentation that was made and the fees that were adjusted. We certainly can address any questions or additional comments, concerns, interest within the proposed fee schedules, but that has already been built into the budget as it was approved last month.
Nancy?
Yeah, I brought up a point yesterday that I thought maybe the handyman revenue was a little light just based on a cursory look at it. And when we approved the fee increase, The argument was it's a very valuable service and folks would be very willing to pay it. Looking at the budget, pointing out that I thought it was maybe a little light on revenue, the comment was made that we'll probably see some attrition in the number of people using the service. So I just wanted to note that. I'm not really sure how many customers use it, pay for it. What is that assumption in the budget? Do we actually expect attrition? How much attrition are we just kind of, putting our thumb in the wind on that one?
Yeroon, do you have any further thoughts on the handyman program and the revenue projections based on the fee increase? Or we could certainly come back with a little bit deeper dive on that to finance and the board as well.
Yeah, I agree. We'll need a little time. We'll probably need a little time to do some investigation to come back to the board.
So we'll take your question and do a little bit further deeper dive and come back with some responses before you approve.
Okay, I'll look forward to that. Thanks.
Carol.
Yeroon, this is for you again. Get your steps in. We discussed at the board meeting a possibility of going a little higher on the contractor yard. In the budget, is it in there at the 5% increase?
Yes, it's
Okay.
just the 5% increase.
Okay. All right.
No problem. Any other questions? Don't worry, I don't mind getting steps in.
I have a quick question. The $100, wait, is this the right place? This is probably not the place, but could you go over again how the $100 guest pass is going to be evaluated and confirm that that's not in the budget?
It is not, no revenue is anticipated in the budget for this year, but I think we received the direction that there is interest in further investigating and developing a program. We will certainly be doing that and working with the various committees in bringing that forward over the next several months.
Okay, thank you.
Are we ready to move on to the next one?
So the next tab is under operating cash, and this is one where we have a budget principle that talks about a balance of operating cash of $2 million, and any funds over that could be used to apply towards the operating fund, towards the budget, or it could be used to offset or towards offsetting future expenses related to facility and property maintenance, which we have now moved over to the capital fund. Our recommendations certainly would not be to add any operating cash into the 26 budget to effectively try and lower that. It creates kind of a false bit, but rather you use those funds, and if you have a very specific one-time event such as the ERP, we use some operating cash for that. But in this budget, we don't recommend utilizing any operating cash. I'm going to turn it over to Todd and Amanda to further discuss that, but this is something we can also come back and have further discussions about in the future. Todd, do you have any further comments on that?
Yeah, so I mean, my comments on this is, I think everyone's aware, one of the things that we've been, I would say, missing is some of that more detailed cash planning, right, and cash forecasting, and I think everyone knows that. And so I think, this idea, even with getting the audits in, looking where we finished the year, I know it ties into some of Dwight's questions in terms of, also our cash timing and so where we are at the beginning of the year. So, my comment here is just, these additional tools, now that we have some ability with Workday to actually go through, and actually one of the reasons we want to seasonalize this budget is actually look at that cash timing. And so I think to meet, the operating cash, I think it's fantastic. We have a number in here. I think the onus is on myself and my team now to provide exactly where those projected balances are, so we can make sure that we're hitting and keeping those thresholds, both on the RWC side and on the RPM side. So, my comments really are, this is something super critical as the cash flow planning piece of our business, and we haven't really had the opportunity or the tools to do that before, and we're quickly moving that so we can actually do the forecasting like we start seeing and looking at those cash balances.
Dwight, you had a question?
So traditionally, this operating cash minimum balance was tied to premiums for insurance to be paid in January. And so it really relates to the insurance discussion that we had yesterday and what funds are needed and when, and how much we're going to charge members to fund that cash flow or not. And so without that insurance question from yesterday being answered, I'm not sure that we can address this point at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the insurance debacle we've been experiencing for the last 3 years ties right into, I hate to say perfect storm, but ties directly in, Dwight, to that cash flow planning and how critical it is to look at the timing of those payments, not just for obviously for us, but for all the mutuals as well, in terms of the timing on those payments being made and making sure that we have the appropriate cash reserves to, bridge that, those premium payments.
Kim?
So I understand you're still working on the cash flow, but in terms of the insurance payments, has anybody taken a look at just that item to determine whether or not a $2 million operating cash would be sufficient? Or would we potentially be needing something beyond that because of this one-time thing? Has that any opportunity been done to do that yet?
Yeah, so just, Kim, really quick right now, it's just at the very top level. I mean, we've been looking, we've been having extensive conversation with the Gallagher on the potential 17-month extension, also getting their estimates back on what the rates are actually going to be. So to Dwight's point, in terms of tying into the conversation yesterday, depending on where those rates come in, regardless if it's a 10% reduction or that if we're actually, flat to last year, wherever those numbers come in, if you look at that 17 months, that's $1.4 million of outflow between January and May when we pay those payments. So we are starting to look at it, but it needs to be finalized and tie into other cash payments. January is sometimes tight. We also have property tax, which is a big payment that goes out twice a year. So putting those dollars in the buckets has work still to be done. And that insurance analysis is at the very top of my deck right now, along with the mutual budgets, and going through the mutual budgets will finalize their cash need, right, for those same payments. It doesn't take away from this discussion here with RPM and RWC, but actually mapping out that cash flow, not just for January and May payments, but then what would future June payments look like, because we're moving into a different billing cycle, right? So, we leap forward a year from now, we're going to be budgeting 6 months of coupon for the existing contract, and then 6 months of unknown right now, right, for the back half of 20. So, long answer, we are working on it. We have some top-level numbers, but we still need to finalize all of that.
So you just mentioned a $1.4 million number as an estimate for 17 months of insurance. Is that our best guess right now for RWC?
Somewhere between 1.4 and 1.5 in terms of cash.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian?
Just as a order of magnitude, I mean, where do you think we will end up the year? I mean, is it going to be with 2 million and 1 cent, or is it going to be 3 million, or where in that range do you think we'll end up?
I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with our putting these dollars into a cash plan model, Adrian. So, and having those insurance numbers, it would be premature to speak to where we're in. I understand the severity of the question and knowing where we're going to be for the year, and that has to be forthcoming here pretty quickly, but the insurance is a huge piece of that, and we've been waiting for that, basically those numbers to plug in.
Well, the only reason I'm really asking is that, I mean, if we're going to exit the year with way over $2 million, then that means we really do have a decision to make about what do we do with that excess money. If we end up at 2.3, 2.4, no big deal. But, you know, if it ends up being significantly more or significantly less, which I really doubt, then this group has a decision to make on behalf of our constituents.
And there definitely will be a decision to make, regardless of, you know, the final outcome and estimate. What we would recommend is that those resources don't be utilized towards your 2026 to lower that by infusing some operating cash. But we do want to have a greater conversation with you in terms of the whole process and cash flow related to the insurance and trying to transition this year. We have kind of a golden opportunity to do that this year. So we want to come back and have a deeper conversation related to that. In terms of the overall final projection for operating cash, yes, we will come back and have a greater conversation as well about what is the direction for use of those funds.
Any other questions?
Well, if I could just add that the overall budget, I don't know what page number this is, but shows that in 2024 there was an excess of income over expenses of $123,000. The audit actually said there was only $1,600. So there's no surplus from 2024 to be applied to anything, $1,600. The forecast that, which is terrific that you guys did that, is forecasting a surplus of $224,000 for 2025. So that is fairly insignificant and might offset some of that insurance. We also have other options for decisions down the road that maybe if there's surplus, it goes to the capital fund or something else. So I think delaying this is appropriate.
So that pretty much concludes our presentation on the RWC side of the house. We certainly have a list of questions and comments to come back to you with. But overall, healthy debate and discussion on a number of different items. We will bring this back to the Finance Committee for review and then to the board for final adoption at your meeting in September. If things come up between now and then, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us for a discussion if it wasn't covered today. But now we are ready to transition to Rossmore Property Management and the 2026 budget for that.
So we have seem to be going through this quite quickly. This would be our lunch break time before we get into the RPM piece of it. Do we want to take a 5-minute break so we can go right through that other part of the budget? And remember that the copy of the RPM budget is in your packet. And we can, so we'll take 5 minutes. So we'll convene back by 10:17. Try to be on time so we can get out of here early. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. We will be on presentation of the draft, the RPM operations budget.
So just as a way of a quick introduction, this is a process that we began, I think, 2 years ago, where we started including RPM's budget within the budget workshops. Previous to that, RPM budget was passed at a later board meeting as kind of a perfunctory thing, and it didn't really get a lot of individual attention. This is the budget for our property management division, and it's what sets the management fee that is included in all of the mutual budgets that that have agreements with us to provide those services. It also has other departments where we provide billable services. So it's a critical budget. It is a very large portion of our overall operation. We have been going through a pretty in-depth process with the mutuals in updating the management agreement. So that is something that has been working through. And a lot of that has to do with the level of service and identifying everything that is included within the management agreement and other services. I'm going to turn it over to Jeroen to do a little bit more in-depth overview of the department as well as what is included in the operations budget. So Jeroen.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. And good morning, board. Good morning, Finance Committee. So just to start off, tell you a little bit about Rossmore Property Management. So as I think you all know, we are set up as a not-for-profit organization. Don't make any money off of anything. So we set everything up to be a zero-based budget. We have a few different departments that are in Rossmore Property Management, which include landscaping, building maintenance, member records, resales and alterations. And then we have the management fee, which is the fee that we collect for the management of those departments. So when we jump right in, what we have on the screen right now is the 2026 budget, where we have an increase in the management fee of the 5.9%. So this whole management fee has to balance out with all the other member records and the resales and alterations and building maintenance. And the way it works is building maintenance has historically been not been a profit driver, right? So it usually has a loss, and then member records has a profit, and resales and alterations has a profit, and the loss from building maintenance is counteracted by the wins of member records and resales and alterations. So we've had to do a few things this year as far as reviewing the management agreement, because that was a big portion of the work that was done in 2025. So with that, we really dove into what do we do for the mutuals and what's included for what we provide and what is extra. So really what we found was that, you know, there were portions of member records that really are part of the management agreement. So we moved some of the labor out of member records into the management agreement. And that also helped offset some of the losses from building maintenance. So you'll see that we have a small decrease in other billable services, but we have an increase in the billable services from building maintenance. So when we dive into the actual management fee, we have a summary head count, which we can go over the people that are actually included in the management fee. So we have administration, and this is on the summary head count page that I'm looking at right now, Todd, just so you know. Administration, the budget for 26 has a 0.5% or 0.5 person increase in FTE there. And that person was somebody that we had addition for working with the department as far as having a strong pipeline and having somebody that can be there to aid. We never actually filled that position in 26, so we're looking to, or in 25, so we're looking to have it in 26. Human Resources has 1.85 people allocated to the management agreement. Accounting has 12.05. The Mutual Board Office has 3. Information Technology has 3. Building Management has 7.5. And Landscape Management has 4.5 for a total of 37.4 total FTEs. And feel free to stop me anytime if you have any questions. I know that Dwight has some questions to ask, so we'll definitely get into those. Some of the things on the management agreement fee, some of the major drivers, we have a large increase in copy and printing services. And this has a lot to do with, we actually paid for the audit distributions to the mutuals this year because of the fact that they were late. Also, there's DocuSign involved in this, as well as we're forecasting an increase in copy and printing for the new doing business as Rossmore Walnut Creek. So we jump in.
Excuse me, what page are we on? I can't.
No problem. So what I was just at was, I was on D610 management fee. I don't have my pages numbered twice, so I apologize.
I got it, thank you.
Sure. And then what I was going to jump into now was landscaping, right? So
well, I had a question, Jeroen, if
sure,
I could.
Absolutely, Dwight.
So on that management fee side, the salary and wages look reasonable in terms of the increase year over year. But when I look at employment taxes, so the salary and wages are up 5%, okay? But employment tax is up 37%. That doesn't jive.
That is an Amanda thing, so we definitely discussed this before the meeting.
So this is confessions from prior year budget. So prior year budget in 2025 was understated. It was a formula error where there were some lines not included in the sum total that was put into the budget. So,
but I'm in looking at the forecast for 2025, it's a similar big increase. And maybe you need some time to look at that, but it just, something looks off there. Same with medical expense, same with 401k.
yes.
Because I'm comparing to 2025 forecast, not to the budget.
Yeah, you can look at the forecast further to make sure that the forecast looks accurate. But for sure the budget over budget, which is the variance that's showing there is due to the formula error on the taxes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to comment, unfortunately, even though obviously the head count and the salary and labor is such a huge portion of this budget, and we kind of touched on this yesterday, there's so many moving variables in terms of, if you look at the actual year in terms of filling positions or open positions where we're not incurring tax, when you look at an actual full budget that has all the employees with their full tax burden, right? There are variances between when those positions are hired that can lower the actual forecast. So you kind of have two things happening here at once. You have one where last year's budget was understated, and then you have this year's forecast depending on the actual hiring and when those people are not a full whole year of compensation that would have a lower forecasted tax than an actual 2026 full budget fully staffed. So there's a couple different variables at play here. However, I think there's certainly be more, future discussions on how we do a better job analyzing payroll maybe and actually breaking down where some of these increases are. So, Adrian's point yesterday on the medical benefits, right? Those are actually tied to the actual person, the number of dependents. The 401k obviously is up because of more people funding into the 401k with the defined pension sold. So there's a lot of things that are happening within there based on what's actually going on during the year, right? We can kind of probably dig in a little deeper there and kind of maybe provide the board with maybe a separate deep dive a little bit in terms of how those line up.
It'd be worth a look. Thank you.
All right. I was going to jump into our landscape department, and our landscape department is a break-even department, and we provide landscape rehab for the mutuals, irrigation inspections, as well as maintaining and monitoring their irrigation controllers, some minor pest control.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
I had one other question. You are so friendly.
Yeah.
In a good way, other professional services, $130,000.
Right.
And I thought yesterday there was some thought that should be removed. Did I fantasize that?
You see it's 47,029, Todd, I believe he's speaking about?
Yes. So I think it was further implementation costs.
74,030, I believe.
It's because it's on multiple different pages, that's why, because they all roll up.
We should be on page 2110, 21-10 for.
If you're looking at the D600, I believe it's almost at the very bottom.
Dwight, could you tell us again what figure you're looking at, the dollar amount?
Leanne, I could barely hear you.
What is the dollar amount? What is the dollar amount that Dwight is referencing? Was it 130?
Yeah, it's 130,000 in the 2026 draft budget, and it was 120,000 in the approved 25 budget, but spend is looking to be very, very low.
I believe this is the temp service that we brought on for data cleanup, and we actually just brought them on. So it's probably, that's why there's a low spend in this year. But this is in relation to our overall data cleanup within our new systems to make sure, and we are working with the mutuals and our member records to make sure everything is brought up and clean before we get started with all of our new systems. So this position will carry forward throughout 2026, but really just started about 2 months ago, perhaps. So that's why you see a lower number in 25 projected.
So it's a part of the ERP conversion that we allocated funds for from 2022 surplus, and now we're asking for money again? I mean, I know that's a big question. and the deficit that we budgeted for MOD, it was MOD at the time, was greater than the audited result of 479,000. So I guess what I'm saying is, are we asking for this money twice?
So I'll answer that. The member records temporary hope cleanup, I don't think was ever envisioned in that initial amount, Dwight, when we looked at the ERP implementation in terms of the sheer amount of work to go through and clean up the absolute, I don't know, perhaps choose my words carefully here. The member records piece is very, very, very dirty data that needed so much work. And so this resource was a new, I think when we look at everything we're trying to do with the 4041s, with just absolutely cleaning up the member records once and for all so it all matches from every system. I don't think this level of work was ever anticipated back then when that surplus was carried forward. However, to your question in terms of the $630,000 loss we can get into versus where we ended the year, right? We can bring in that discussion in terms of, where we actually ended last year's budget, right? With the, where we had actually carried that $637,000 into a loss, and we know with the audit results now we're at 274. So we technically lost less money last year, right? And I think that can come into our conversation. However, I'd say this temp help piece is outside the scope in terms of work that needs to be done.
I think it's pertinent. We already transferred the funds from RWC to the mutuals to cover the implementation of the ERP conversion. I'd hate to think that we're upping the management fee to get that money again. So I think it is pertinent.
So for everybody else's sake, this goes back to some significant history in terms of the planning for the ERP implementation, where there was allocation for both the piece related to the RPM side of the house as well as the RPM side of the house. And there was a transfer of funds from RPM due to a surplus due to the whole pandemic and PPP money, and a surplus that was generated during that time, where we used that reserve to fund RPM's portion of that. So we're talking about transfer into that. Stop me if I'm incorrect, but I think what Dwight is talking about is that funding, was it utilized completely, or is that still available to cover this remaining portion of the implementation? And that's something we probably will kind of need to go back and still track to confirm the history of those funds.
So I will agree with Jeff here. There needs to be a little more. We've been waiting for obviously for the 24 audits. There's also the finalizing what was actually booked to the balance sheet for implementation costs versus expense, like this temporary help for this piece. And so there needs to be some, I would say, a little more due diligence. And now that we have these audits closing out those 24 results, right? So we can actually certify what was that true number, and that can carry forward and to cover this. We definitely know where we ended last year now with, like I mentioned, that losing, there's $360,000 there that's technically, less of a loss than we projected. I think we need to do some, the final audit adjustments and finalize 24 results to bring that conversation forward into what we're here is basically a P&L or an income statement conversation for this budget versus obviously the missing balance sheet piece and where that cash goes in terms of cash versus, revenue and expenses.
All right.
One more question now.
No,
that
no more.
Got your attention. Telephone looks wacky, and we had a bit of that conversation yesterday, and it's a big increase over the forecast from 47,000 to 62,000. 62,000 happens to be what was budgeted in 2025, but forecast is 47,000. So I would wonder why that would increase.
Does that have to do with future stipends and the new ERP system? No?
Dwight, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. I got to look at Workday and see if there was some of the similar thing that happened yesterday in terms of where our run rate is to last year's budget. So let me just get back to you here.
Great, thank you.
Give me 5.
Didn't this also have to do with the implementation of the 10G network that was approved last year and allocation of that in this year's budget? I think in our description, we include the 10G internet usage and the cost of that, which wasn't part of or hasn't fully been implemented in 2025. We'll come up with the clarification, but I think that was mainly attributed to the implementation of the 10G network that was approved last year's budget and implemented mid-year this year.
Okay. So what was in landscape, I was just telling you about our landscape department, and landscape is a break-even department. So very little change. FTE is exactly the same at 15. Really driving factor in their budget is the increase in wages, and then really some really small items. We have a decrease in pest control, an increase in irrigation, miscellaneous for landscape materials, but other than that, it's a fairly flat budget. Does anybody have any questions on landscape budget? Okay, great. Then we'll move on to the, the property management, building maintenance portion of the budget. So this is the portion of the budget where it is not a profit driver, it's a loser. So you'll see that the draft budget, we have a decrease, it's a loss of $379,000. And that's an increased loss from the budget of 25. That has a lot to do with the removal of the setup fee revenue out of the building maintenance. And so because what we do is it's an accounting situation, just so everybody knows, the way it works is when an outside vendor does work for a mutual third party, they give a $25 discount on their invoice. And then that $25 discount goes to the mutuals, but the mutual ends up cutting a check to RPM to pay for the services because we schedule and we take the phone calls in and we get those third-party vendors out here. That is something that we've done in the past in an effort to be equitable, but reviewing it with our legal counsel and just reviewing the entire process, it is something that we can do legally, but it is not a very transparent practice, and it's a practice that really puts what I would say is a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of the mutuals because they feel like they have to cut us that check. So what we did was we took that $160,000 of revenue out of building maintenance, which put it even a further loser, but we took that revenue and we built it into the management fee, and that's a reason why the management fee is up to where it is above the CPI. Major drivers in this budget, it's a really flat budget, but removing that $160,000 of revenue and moving that over into the management agreement, that's the big driver of this budget, which is increasing the negative numbers. But there is where we did some work with member records as well, so we can talk about that as well. Does anybody have any questions on building maintenance? Okay, great. So then we'll get into member records. Oh, and just so you know, building maintenance, no head count, same FTEs as it was in 2025. Member records, exactly the same head count, 3 FTEs in member records. Now you'll see here in member records that in 2025 we had a positive variance of 279,000 approximately. In 2026 we have a variance of a positive 375,000 approximately. That is because we moved some of the salaries out of member records. Because what we did was when we really went through the management agreement and we said what is actually a billable extra and what's included. There's a big portion of member records that's actually included and it's not a billable extra. So we took some of their salaries and we moved it out of member records and moved it into the management agreement. So that also helped us with our bottom line on member records because we had that $160,000 loss in building maintenance additional. We have that made up here in member records by moving some of those salaries out. Does anybody have any questions on member records? Dan?
Okay, I'm a little confused. You left the FTEs at 3, but yet you're saying you're reducing salaries by $70,000 almost. So either everyone, the 3 people took big pay cuts, so you don't have 3 people there anymore, at least in my mind. And if you don't have 3 people here, then, and you said you didn't cut anyone, then that means you moved a half or a full person to someone else, and at least in my thinking.
Hey, I'll jump in on this one.
Thanks, Todd. I know it has to do with management.
So, Dan, you are correct. So the head count, so historically, as I think you mentioned in the beginning, we have tried to show that building maintenance and member records and resale alterations offset each other, correct? So there's 2 things at play here. One is continuing that kind of history, looking at those 3 categories and how they offset each other, right? Which would include increases in revenue, but obviously if you were to look at the MTF and where the business comes from on the resale and alterations and member records revenue with document, right, that's kind of we don't necessarily see an increase in there because we're becoming flat over a year. So what we did was in conjunction with the management agreement, move some of those baseline service levels of member records staffing into the management fee bucket from member records, and that is a shift. Dan, to your point, the backup data didn't boost. We made those changes in just salary. We need to go back and move those full people, including their benefits, which are really small in these three, into the management fee and have the backup documentation on headcount be brought forward into the management fee bucket. So there's no change in people, but there is just a reduction in salary, and the backup pages did not catch up with that change on the dollars, right? So we owe you guys the moving of those positions into the management side, right? So no change in headcount, but we shifted dollars out of salary and wages only to still allow those three to offset each other and to account for some of the member record services that were, so the other option would be, just so we can be on the same page, you could leave all the member records in member records, and you would see that those three categories do not necessarily offset each other because they're wildly different, right? And you would see necessarily, if you were consolidating this, landscape would still be completely break even, but you would show a surplus in management fee that would account for the losses in some of those other departments, right? So it would be a shift in reporting. What we did though was, because of the management agreement, we moved people over into management fee because they really are part of the management agreement. So that's a lot, but there's dollars in salary and wages that are tied to positions that need to be reallocated to the management fee.
We need to update the head count within the management fee to reflect that we moved the dollars over. So we'll do that.
Thank you, Dan. And then the last department to discuss is resales and alterations. Again, no change in FTEs, 4 FTEs. Major driving factor in this budget is the increase in CPI and the COLA increase. But we also have a little bit of a greater positive variance than we did last year. And last year we had a little bit of, we have a little bit of a positive variance this year, and that has a lot to do with the retirement of one of our lead inspectors. Very high paid lead inspector retired, and hiring on a lower paid inspector. So we have 21,849 surplus there. For
Question,
the
Dan?
budget.
So just out of curiosity, I see your resale inspection fee is going down from the current 2025 forecast. Do you know how many units you have projected on the resale inspection fee?
So I believe we continue to forecast the 400 units that
400?
we plan to sell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If I could just tack onto that, so I'm a little confused about the 10% increase in fees for alterations. Was that in 2025 or is that
was
for
in
2026?
It was in 2025 and will not affect the 2026 budget.
Okay, but we expect fees to go down.
We expect fees to go down just simply from sales, the sales being lacking in the valley.
Yeah, but if we're assuming 400 again, why would they go down? Not a big number, but I'm just curious why that would happen.
So we approve budget. Will help.
That's again one we'll come back to you with an analysis of the fees associated with inspections.
Okay, so we'll come back to you with some answers on that one, Dwight. Are there any other questions on resales and alterations?
Hey, real quick, I can answer the telephone question now, so we don't have to come back to it. So the current, if you look at actuals, we did have the 10G, as Jeff mentioned in there. It is included in that forecast, so I would say we can truly reduce that budget. So if I looked at how it was imported into Workday, kind of that similar error, took place. It was mentioned yesterday. So they put in basically a matching number for last year's budget, is the way the system worked. Instead, it should have been tweaked. So I would say you can put 60,000 or 10,000 back in your pocket.
Every buck is important.
100%. And then just a real quick summary. The management fee is break even at $6,075,000. Building maintenance has a negative loss of $379,000, which is made up by member records, positive variance of $375,000 and approximately $22,000. So a break even budget. Yes, Kim.
So I just have an overall question. This is more a philosophical question because I don't have background, but why aren't all these different categories budgeted to zero? Why do we have some covering others?
This is the way it was originally set up, and to be completely frank with you, Kim, this is the way it was when I got here in 2023. It was always a break-even budget where we had these different departments, and we always knew that building maintenance was a loser, so we always tried to make the other twos a winner so we could counteract each other. It is an interesting budget. I'll be completely frank with you. I agree with you on that, and that's why I think Todd was alluding to earlier, where maybe we in the future don't look to try to get the budgets to balance so much as far as the departments, but then whatever that variance is made up by the management agreement fee.
It's really a history of the services provided to the mutuals and the value of that service. So everything to do with the building maintenance section as a overall value, where it is able to be made up in other categories. One of the things we do have to look at is, what is our ability to deliver those various services as we progress through time. But original history is purely offering that as a value to the mutuals at a overall loss.
All right. That'll conclude my review. Thank you all very much.
So we do have a number of items related to MOD or RPM that we will bring back to you for clarification. But that concludes our presentation of the two different budgets. We are certainly open to any further questions on either budget or process. But pending
Do we still
that,
get lunch?
Pending that, we will have early lunch if you'd like to stick around. But are there any follow-up or further questions that we can answer at this point?
Anything from the board or finance? Okay, next regular meeting of the Finance Committee will be held on Tuesday, September 23rd, 9 a.m. in the boardroom at Gateway Complex and over Zoom. And the next end of month monthly meeting of the Board of Directors will be held Thursday, September 25th at 9 a.m. At the Peacock Hall at Gateway Complex and also over Zoom. Remember that there is an executive meeting following lunch. Right here? Okay, so executive meeting here. And with that, I adjourn.
Could you just let me know what time the executive meeting will begin?
We can hold it now until lunch arrives if you'd like. It should be a very brief topic. We can hold it in the back where it's closed off. And so we can transition to that right now. It shouldn't be more than 5 or 10 minutes.
How would Leanne?
She has Zoom, and I have Zoom set up back there.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll go to the back room for our executive meeting.